The theme, I think, of integration sort of runs through all of these. Integration physically, of course, in Shahid's proposal, but also sort of integration in terms of curriculum. In Maria's presentation, I think the idea of integration is critical to innovation. And Majd, you had some interesting ways, I think, in which to think about integration at the urban scale. I've thought of a few specific questions for each of you, but I think in some ways, I wonder if you have sort of comments about each other's proposals and the way in which, having seen the other proposals, how you might think of integration in a slightly different way. Each of us come from our own disciplines, of course, but is there something you can take from another presentation today? We'll get to your questions, I promise.
Maybe I can make a comment on the HBKU versus the partner universities. Again, I'm new to academia, so this is all new for me. But I think I always would like to see more of an environment that encourages the culture of we're all in it together, as opposed to a culture of us versus them. So, and I've learned that from my history in building startup companies, is that whenever you build in a space and environment where you have sales and engineering separate divisions, then that always creates sort of the us versus them. But when you put them all together, then you have the we're all in together, which is really what you need if you want to tackle some of these big problems that we're talking about.
The idea of HBKU is that we're all in it together. That's why it was the evolution and the last academic entity to be created. But the challenge that we have, and again, we utilize all of the partner universities in terms of faculty, researchers, infrastructure. The challenge that we have today is that our headquarters is in the oldest building in QF, which is very prestigious for us in terms of legacy. But so when we tell people, come, we have a meeting in HBKU HQ, nobody knows where it is because they don't recognize it as that. They recognize it as the old QF HQ. So there was nothing built for us, it wasn't built to purpose or to serve HBKU. So that's a challenge for us reputationally as the university. The other challenge is, of course, students functionally and faculty, where do we apply for HBKU academic programs? If there is no building and physical infrastructure that they can identify with, does that mean in the next few years when we try to communicate what HBKU really is, does that become problematic? Or, because when we start communicating, and this has happened, of course, the confusion is that HBKU is an umbrella university to the partner universities. We're not. We're a completely separate university that is actually optimizing on all of the partner universities, which we feel very strongly about. So we're all working together. But unlike the partner universities, we don't have a building. So the partner universities, QF brought in world-renowned architects to design the partner universities. There were openings, people identify. We don't have that, and we're the homegrown university. So it's just a trade-off on, is this really necessary at this point, functionally, reputationally, or is it something in the next few years where if we make an effort academically to grow as a university, and again, because the whole is kind of greater than the rest of its parts, where that's something that we can deal with. And again, there's no good or bad answer. That's something that we're trying to debate internally, and that's why we want everyone's input on that. But we use CMU a lot, professors, infrastructure, and everywhere. But so that's kind of where we are at the university. We're happy to be in one of the oldest buildings in QF. It's very prestigious for us, but people don't recognize it as HBKU. And maybe because it's a little too early, but they have no sense that we have a building, a headquarters, and something that speaks to the vision of HBKU.
Just to add briefly to this, I really enjoyed all presentations, and then just looking at the open spaces, this is really great for the collaboration. So adding to this is that, in my opinion, for the HBKU, this would be great to have an actual physical presence. Just that for the research institutes, we've all over the place, and now we will all be moving here to a certain, one location, which really fosters the us and us situation. So.
Anything? No comment? Thoughts on?
Well, I thought the idea of innovation and looking at innovation not just as something that's applicable to say a district, but it's really applicable to an outlook. I think that is very important. So I think it's expected that any campus building or any program will be innovative, but I think the application of a master plan that is innovative, that really speaks to this sort of flux of how education is delivered is very important. I know, for instance, years ago I worked on a master plan, and there was a room, and this room was being emptied, and we asked the facilities manager, like, why is this room being emptied? What can it be used for? And they said, well, it's going to be a multi-purpose space, and it used to be a computer room, and it used to hold I guess the mainframes or hard drives of computers that basically processed, I think, 5 gigs of memory, and there were these huge IBM computers, and it took them a week to get rid of them. It took about 24 people, and now I'm carrying in my pocket a hard drive that holds 34 gigs. So I think it just speaks to how things change. Spaces are always being adapted, readapted, reused, and there's nothing wrong with in my mind, there's nothing wrong for a campus to have, say, so many master plans, because it's an indication that things are always being looked at critically, and I think that's important in an institution. You don't want to be an institution that is, caught in a 50-year plan and not change.
Do you think there's a different way of thinking about master plans that are perhaps more contingency-based and flexible, or do we need the sort of master plan, even though many times, and particularly in this part of the world, the master plan is already out of date by the time it's finished?
But I think that's where you have to build a certain tolerance in a master plan, something that's flexible, something that's not necessarily tied to a specific design, but it could operate on different scales, so that, and I think many master plans do this, is that you kind of look at it from a land use perspective, but that land use can, based on your time and the period that you're in, could be detailed differently. But I think the important thing is to determine your framework, to see how your campus will evolve and build, and then within that you can detail it in different ways. And that's part of the evolution of any campus, I think, or any city for that matter.
I have one last question for you, and then I'll open it. And this answer or not answer, but to what degree what we do and what we think about here on EC is for Qatar, and for what degree is it for the larger world region, fill in the blank? And because I think there's you could say from these 4 presentations, there are different answers, I think, based on the way you present it. So I'm curious to hear each of your impressions on this.
Well, I would say that you do it for yourself first. It's, again, like, to use an analogy, like flying here for this workshop. You go through the drill with the airline hostesses, and they say, if there's a drop in air pressure, you put the mask on yourself and then you put it on your kid. So I think in many ways you have to do it for yourself. You have to do it for your own kind of institutional and strategic goals, and then the rest will come, right? Like I don't think you can necessarily cater it to anybody else other than yourself. But if you do a good job, then the others will come.
Similarly, at QCRI, we have to, our charter is to match the priorities of the state of Qatar first, and then go to the region, and then global. But you cannot restrict yourself to just Qatar in here, or just EC. So all of the research that we do actually has global impact. We have contracts with Boeing, for example. It's great to see that a company such as Boeing is coming to Qatar to get software technology. So everything we do starts off local, goes regional, and then global.
I think this is exciting because we have a huge opportunity here. If you look around, there aren't many places like Qatar today. I mean, it's, you know, maybe Dubai, the Silicon Valley, Berlin, London, and I mean in a sense of a community where it's incredibly diverse. It represents globalization with the need of trying to protect the local culture. And if we figure out how to build the right environment and space to take advantage of this incredible asset that we have, the world is going in that direction. I mean, I think the world is becoming more mobile, more people are gonna move between different cities, more people are gonna find themselves coming together with people from all over the world and in an accommodating local environment. And I think we have an opportunity here to try to visualize what this environment look like. You know, the question about what the university is it a place where teachers teach, or is it a place for people to come together? I think it's an amazing question. And I think we should spend a lot of time arguing about this, because we shouldn't answer it by saying everybody has done it this way before and therefore we should be doing it the same way. And that's sort of, you know, to the comment about master plan. You know, if I'm not an architect, but if I were, at the end of the day, I'm going to respond to the demand of the policymaker. They're saying, you know, we want this to be this way, and we have our own biases of what a university would be like. But I think it's time to revisit. If we could revisit all these questions and notions, we can design a future for the future world, really.
I mean, I think just to agree, we at QF pride ourselves on the model that we've built, and you know, the conference is Learning from Education City. We don't think that that model exists anywhere else. One physical kind of infrastructure and place that has schools, universities, research institutes, all under one roof working together, and that's something that's really important to us. So I think that is something that, of course, you know, the whole time we had in our, you know, in our minds that we serve Qatar, the region, and it's a global model for people to learn from. And again, nothing, I mean, our vision and our ambitions are limitless. And this is why we have all these amazing, you know, infrastructure projects, plus people identify now QF and Education City with quality, and that means infrastructure, academic programs, research, all of that. So that's something that we're proud of. But I agree. I mean, we've never done it because, you know, people are doing it the same, but we do have some sort of reference point, right? If we are, for HBKU or Education City, a mostly academic and R&D entity, we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. We're going to try to be innovative, and we're going to try to be a hub for knowledge and for education. And it's how do we do that? And again, there is no right answer. This is something that I'm being very transparent with you that internally we are debating all the time. And you know, is HBKU kind of the end of the spectrum for QF, or will more and more programs be launched where we have to think beyond just the homegrown university? And nobody really has a right answer to that. And I think we're all in the same place, and we need everyone's support. But the model that we've built is something that we're very proud of, I think. And it is because we have all of these amazing projects all in one place under one roof.
I'm sure there are questions. Yes.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you all for the great presentations. I really enjoyed them. What caught my attention is the word sustainability. I'm very interested in sustainable design and all of that. So my question is, anyone can answer, but I would like to hear more from Shahid, since you worked on the strategic planning. How can we go over the cultural bounds, especially the ones that we have in the Gulf, to achieve sustainability, especially the walkability part? As you know, we don't only have restrictions in the climate, we also have restrictions in the culture itself. We're not used to this kind of walkability action. So how can we like achieve sustainability and in the same time deal with these cultural bounds? Thank you.
I think it's a very good question. But you know, I think if you were to look to the past, where you look to the pre-petro world, and for instance, in Saudi Arabia, we did some work there, and we proposed a pedestrian pathway in Mecca, and it actually caught a lot of attention because we retraced the path of the Prophet, and it was called the Monhana, and it was his route to Mina that he used to use. So there is a culture of walking, and there is a culture of stopping and hydrating yourself and taking care of yourself in the heat. So I think in any campus, whether it's here or elsewhere, if you provide the opportunities for people to walk in a comfortable environment, people will walk. And I think if you give them the options of taking public transportation, having them, you know, come out in a stop that's shaded, and then providing them access to a building that's within a comfortable walking distance, there's no reason why people would want to get in a car, you know, turn on the air conditioner, let it cool down, drive a few meters, get out. Like, there's a lot of, you know, uptake in that. Whereas, you know, if you actually provide the proper amenities for a walkable environment, which is sustainable, you know, they will come, they will use it. So, you know, it's part of the cultural repository, it's part of the history. So I think if you just provide that environment, they will do it. It's sort of like that drawing, you know, like just now there are chasms which are dedicated strictly for cars. And your walking environment is it's very narrow, it's not very catered to for the pedestrian in this type of a climate. But if you were to actually maintain that and take care of that, I don't see there being any reticence to walking.
Thank you very much for all these very interesting presentations. And I was really glad that you answered the question this morning. Rem Koolhaas was saying how we can make education city more of a city, and I think your plan is really responding to that. So I would have a question also about the innovation, and you had these 3 business models, and I was wondering, for example, where does education come in? Because in fact, the models we have here in Education City are sort of, you know, it's the business model of the university, and I'm actually from Qatar University, which is the state university, which is another model. And from what I understand, I'm not sure, is Hamid bin Khalifa, is it coming back to the model of the state university or not? So I was just wondering where education fits into this model. And another question would be about connectivity and innovation. You didn't mention that, and I think, for example, the collaborations even that we have between QF and Qatar University, I think are quite important in research and other things. And I was also wondering, you know, where we see that going in the future. I have a sort of this model of Harvard and MIT. They were sort of, you know, competitors, but now you have the red line and you can just hop from one to another, and there's a lot of, you know, cross-collaboration with courses and research and everything. So do you see that as something also that's important for the future of this university and Qatar, you know, the education, the universities in Qatar? Thank you.
Okay, great questions. So education and our role in innovation. So it's actually interesting because there was an ending to my presentation that I decided to delete the last minute, which is I actually looked at myself at my office today, and I said, does my office really encourage any of these 4 things I talked about? And my office is a beautiful office at Carnegie Mellon University, wonderful university, great space. But the answer is no. Then I asked my question, the other question, which is, am I required to be involved in innovation, or is education something else? And I think I've came to the answer that education for me is more of customer service. So I needed my office as a space for me to come and prepare my lectures so that I can deliver it to my students. If I were required to do something more than that, my office is not the right place to be. So anytime I want to actually create innovation type of activities, I go into the faculty lounge or I go sit with the students in the Actually, my favorite place in the building is the cafeteria where I mingle with the students. I prefer to be there much more than in my office. Your other second question about connectivity, absolutely. I think actually, interestingly, I think on campus today, there's more innovation happening on cyberspace than it is on campus. Because I think the students across the various universities are able to actually communicate and interact and collaborate with each other online significantly more than they're able to do it in their physical environment, physical space, due to the fact that the spaces are far from each other, you know, time limitations and all of that. They have lectures and things like that. So connectivity has actually, I think the internet, the World Wide Web, in the past 50 years, you can see the amount of innovation, the speed by which innovations is happening have increased dramatically. And I think I say part of that is the internet.
I mean, one question to ask too is collaborative space innovative space? You know, we've seen a lot of discourse these days in massive online courses, the inverted classroom where people actually take their lectures at home and then they come into the campus to actually collaborate. But I think it goes to what you're saying, is that collaborative space actually innovative space? And how do you make that collaborative space innovative? And you know, just hearing some of our speakers here earlier today in terms of what they bring to Education City from their own ethos, their design ethos, I think it's very interesting because they bring a different outlook, even though they are trying to imbibe their projects with a certain Qatariness or dealing with a certain environmental response, but they are still bringing, say, a Dutch response, a Mexican response, you know, a Spanish response to the projects here. So what that actually does is I think it imbibes the collaborative space with a certain innovativeness that makes it different from any place else that they may want to go and study. And I think that's important, and I think there's a correlation between the two that I think makes Education City special for those reasons. Obviously, you'll always have the individual who will, you know, want to go and sit on the beach with their notebooks and study, but you know, you can't fulfill those individual expectations. You can just try and create sort of a common scenario for them to be collaborative.
I was just going to answer the question. Education is the basis of everything that we do, and I think our relationship with Qatar University is very important. So what we're trying to do now is in terms of physical infrastructure, again, sharing a lot of the space. So the research facilities that the institutes are going to be in, that Medj was saying, QU I think is going to have access to all of that, being the national university. In terms of faculty academic planning, we have committed that for the next 5 years, whatever undergraduate, graduate programs we launch will be done complementing Qatar University. So that's really important for us. But as HBKU, I think QU is the national university and it's a public university. We are a national university in scope. The research institute's the academic program, but we're a private university just by virtue of being under the umbrella of QF. And we won't be very big in number. The vision is that, you know, we will have a maximum of 1,500, 2,000 students in the next few years, but it's big on impact. And we can do that because we have the partner universities and Qatar University working together with us.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Apologies for those with raised hands. Thank you. Thank you.